Today, we're talking about when growth feels heavier than it should. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story. But before we get into that, I want you to tell me if you're the one carrying growth in your head right now and you feel all of this pressure and this 10-pound weight on your shoulders about thinking of pipeline when you wake up in the morning until you go to bed at night, and you constantly feel like something is off, something is hard. And if I had to guess, maybe it feels like growth is broken. And if it just feels heavier than you should, then stick around because this is going to be really for you. So this week I had a conversation with someone in a space that I've already been in. And in this space, it's a very fast-paced sales cycle. Now, for a moment, I want you to remember that there are really two playbooks that we have inside of marketing. One, fast sales cycle, and that is an SMB motion, right? Things move quickly, sales cycle is fast, and pipeline has to move fast. Number two is account-based marketing. The pipeline tends to move more slowly, and our efforts tend to be more personalized and specific. So, the example that I'm giving you here falls into that first bucket. It's an SMB pipeline. And the challenge that I had with this individual who was sharing, I guess, her challenges was she was talking about, gosh, it just feels like everything is chaotic and it feels like there's so much pressure. And you know that a few weeks back, I shared with you that we're seeing this kind of change in what is required of a CMO. And it's basically that the job description got 30% longer. This is part of the reason why growth feels a little bit heavy, but I do want to go in a little bit deeper. And I want to talk about what that actually means. What I want to say is it's really feeling like it's taking more effort to do anything than it used to. And here's why. Another conversation, being able to parlay that, existing conversation into another one that I had earlier today, in fact, and that was this. Right now in marketing, you have two things happening. You've got to be able to move the strategy forward. That means you need to keep the C-suite up to date. You got to tell the board what's happening. You got to make sure that people know what's moving and happening in marketing so that you're not stopped. That's a full-time job. The other side of that is you've got to make sure that the execution is happening, that the pipeline is moving, that the sales team is happy, that the product team is happy, that the customer experience team is happy, and that marketing is moving forward the way that it's supposed to. So what I hope you're hearing is it's not just that everything feels a little bit heavier. It actually is. You're having more conversations, you're having more alignment, you're having more follow-ups, you're having more thinking. And that's because things are not as clean as they used to be. When there's not an integrated growth layer inside of the organization, marketing takes on and shoulders that heavy burden of responsibility because, again, the truth is no one else needs marketing. Marketing needs everyone else. And here's what I mean by that. Sales needs marketing for their leads, sure, but they can generate leads on their own. Product needs marketing to be able to get their product to market, sure, but product is going to keep iterating and going to keep creating a product with or without marketing. Customer experience needs marketing to be able to make sure that they nurture the right people and say the right things, absolutely. But customer experience is going to keep doing their job whether or not marketing is there to support them. So you can quickly see how it can be very, very hard for marketing if there isn't a growth layer across the board, meaning some way to stop each individual department from working in silos. And that's the piece that is missing. It's making sure that we have answers to the questions of, is pipeline actually converting? Should we spend more? Should we cut back? And how do we make sure that that's happening across the entire go-to-market team? Because it isn't just marketing that should shoulder that. It's the collective that needs to shoulder that. And all of those questions and all of those pieces of conversation can't just live in one department. So I'm going to tell you why that's important. You've probably heard all about the cognitive load that oftentimes is brought up when people think about what it's like to be a working parent. There's a lot of cognitive load in being a working parent because you're constantly thinking about making sure that your family gets what they need, making sure that your work gets what you need. So what does that have to do with a growth department? I'll tell you, cognitive load is not just about making decisions. It's about holding multiple versions of reality in your head at the same time. That's what's happening when you're checking in as a parent, as a worker, and as an individual. And it's the same thing that's happening if you're a marketer trying to make space for sales, for marketing, for product, and for customer experience. When you have all of that happening, things get very heavy and growth feels harder because you're having to wear too many hats. Again, the solution to that is to create a growth layer inside of the organization where one individual sits above those four departments. It's not just marketing, it's not just sales, it's not just CX, and it's not just product. It's a representative from each one of them working with that strategic growth layer to ensure that you're making the right decisions and that the kill criteria you use for the experiments that you run work the way that they're supposed to. This is not something new. This is actually that something that's been shared by Sean Ellis, who is the founder of kind of growth hacking mentality, and he comes into organizations and does this same effort. So this isn't something new. It's just something that I think a lot of organizations haven't quite figured out. Again, what I've shared in the past is oftentimes they'll think about, hey, we have a chief customer officer or a chief revenue officer or a chief marketing officer or even a chief growth officer. But what they're missing is that those people are still living in one of those silos. And that's the reason why the growth layer isn't working. Because if you're still trying to have everything roll up under one individual, sales and marketing come over here, or sales, marketing, and customer experience come over here, you still end up with one person having that cognitive load. Those departments should be separated for a reason. Marketing needs to do their own things, sales needs to do their own things, product does, and CX does. The piece that's missing is combining all of them together in terms of creating an individual place for all four department heads to meet, where an orchestrator is actually making sure that they get the kill criteria and what needs to be focused on in terms of growth from each of those four individuals. That's when you make sure that growth continues, and that's when you prevent integration from breaking. The CEO cannot be the system that is not the CEO's role. That works for a while when a company is smaller to help make sure that those departments stay tightly aligned. But that really growth layer is what's needed in order to make sure that things move forward the way that they're supposed to. And here's why that matters. Leaders who are sharp, decisive, and capable are now tired. They're burnt out, and it's because they're thinking too much consistently, trying to interpret, trying to translate, trying to align, trying to correct, all while trying to execute inside of their silos. And that conversation's happening every day across the board, and not just in the conversations I'm having. I'm seeing those all over social media as well. So the reason for the reframe here and the reason for the focus is growth is not supposed to live inside of your head. It is supposed to live inside of a system. And that system needs to integrate the narrative from marketing, the systems from sale, the capital from finance, the product team, and the customer experience team. And when you have that together as a system, your decisions get lighter and the teams perform better. And that is where true growth gets unlocked. So if growth is feeling heavier than it should right now, it's not necessarily because you're doing something wrong. It's because you're trying to carry something that should not sit with one person. It's not sustainable. And it's not how companies scale. Growth needs structure, and it needs an intelligence level that allows you to be able to pull all of those great people thinking together. That's what the work is about, and that's growth actually. So I hope this has been helpful. And let me know if there's any questions that you have. Happy to take care of those for you. Have a great day.